In every generation, a rare few rise, not just to lead companies, but to shape entire industries. Not just teams, but movements. Welcome to the League of Extraordinary Leaders East Africa, where vision meets courage and strategy sparks transformation. Hosted by Uganda's leading business journalist, Muhereza Kyamutetera. This is your front row seat to the minds reshaping the future of African business.
Hello, good people. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on the time you're watching this. Welcome to yet another edition of the LXL East Africa. That's the League of the Extraordinary Leaders, the East Africa edition, where we get to look at leaders in the region who are shaping the destiny of this region, but also the continent as a whole. Here we get to feature leaders from across all sectors, across all genders. Of course, gender balance is very, very important. And I'll tell you why down the lane. But basically, the show is about inspiring the next generation of leaders by having conversations, genuine conversations with the leaders who've been there. As you know, in the African tradition, they say, we better learn from those who have walked the journey. So with me here today is a lady who, if I attempted to describe her, I'm not sure I will be doing her justice, because just when I knew she was into, one different area of work, civil justice and many other areas, then now most recently she invaded our space of writing. So I really don't know how to describe her. So I think Madam Jacqueline Asiimwe, yes. I'll let you do the honors of introducing yourself. Just make sure I don't get things wrong, and then we can get this show started.
Okay. So do I start like my CV from P7? I was the head girl. What is that? How far I should go?
As far as you think, eventually I believe this show, once it gets where I want to be,
yes,
everybody will be watching it. So feel free to start from wherever you want to.
So I am glad to be on the show. Jacqueline is my name. I'm a lawyer by training, an advocate by calling, and when I say that, I mean that I believe that I was put here on this earth to use my voice for various causes. I started out my journey as using my voice for women's rights and human rights, still do, but along the way, I've learned to use my voice for other issues. I call myself a travelist. I love traveling. I am such a nomad. One of my favorite aunties calls me Vasco da Gama, but I'm my happiest when I'm on a long stretch of road, just looking out at nothingness. I'm at my happiest when I'm watching a sunset or a sunrise. So I'm a travelist. I also call myself a philanthropist, and by this I mean I am a generous African, I am a generous human, I am a generous person, and I give of my time, of my treasure, of my talent. So I call myself a philanthropist. And I am a lover of leaders also. I believe, just like John Maxwell says, everything rises and falls on leadership. And I believe that, you can only get as far as your leader can go. And so there's a leader led. And as a leader, as leaders, we need to keep aspiring for better, aspiring for more, because, if your lid is low, that's where your community or the people that you're leading will end. So leader, lawyer, advocate, and philanthropist and travelist. Moving Pimpi.
Okay, great. We'll start from the travelist bit.
Yes.
You did author a book recently, Facing the Mountains.
Yes.
Tell us about, I think we share that bit of, we have a problem in our feet. We like walking, we like traveling.
Ants in our pants.
Yes. You tell us about Facing the Mountains. What is this book about, and what inspired you to write it, and what does it tell about all these things that you say you're interested in?
So Facing Mountains is a book that I wrote and launched in 2024. But it's a project that took quite a number of years, because I was trying to figure out what story do I have to tell. In 2015-16, I climbed 6 mountains in East Africa. I started with Elgon, went to Muhabura, did Renzori, did Longonot, did Morungole, which is in Kidepo, and also did Kilimanjaro. And during those times, both as I was training for the mountains and as I was climbing, I used to journal a lot. And in my mind, I had told myself that I would write something about the lessons on the mountain. Indeed, I even started a blog. I believe it's called either Lessons from the Mountain or Dear CEO, something like that. And I wanted to pick and write about the lessons that I had gleaned on the mountain. And then I put that project to rest. And then a few years later, having actually walked various journeys, I thought to myself, let me pick this up again, dust off what my experiences were. And so the book is both stories of the mountains that I climbed, but also interspersed with stories of my life and the figurative mountains that I've climbed in my life.
Okay. Maybe you answer a bit of some of the key defining mountains in your life that you think have shaped you into the leader that you are today.
Wow. Aish, where do I start?
Yeah.
I think just growing up in the Uganda that we grew up itself, and of course when you're younger, you don't have the same awareness as when you're older and you look back and say, whoa, that was a mountain. But yes, growing up in a time when Uganda was conflicted a lot, I remember growing up and we had to line up for things like sugar, for things like just the basic needs, and having to flee when there were gunshots. I remember there's a time my father had an accident, literally had broken his leg, but there was insecurity and we ran out of the house to go and hide. And my father, one, he was on crutches, he couldn't go very far. So he stayed in the house to sort of guard it and say, if they come, they catch me at least. And I was so conflicted. I was so pained that this is what we were facing, that my dad that I love so much was the one that if the thieves came or whoever was shooting would find him, would find us. So growing up in that mountain of insecurity and knowing therefore why good governance is so important in our life, not just as Ugandans, but as Africans, as the world over, that if we're not doing the right things, we're causing young children to flee. We're causing mothers to die while giving birth. So as a child, having to run away from insecurity, and later in my years, therefore understanding why it was important for me and many others to fight for good governance in our country, on our continent, and the world over. That is very, very important. So that's one of the mountains that I faced. Another one I think that defined me was being a PK, a preacher's kid, and struggling with the mountain of perfection. A preacher's kid, for those that do not know the experience, you're literally forced to live a life of excellence. And so half the time you're pretending, half the time you're faking it, half the time you are hiding your real self. And that too can be a mountain. And that pressure that we put on, because it's not my vocation, it's my parents' vocation. I didn't choose where I am born, but you're putting this weight of perfectionism on me. And carrying that mountain, like I said, you can only feel it when you are the one. And so having to grow out of that shell, first of all, discover who I was. There was a moment I literally was going through an identity crisis, like a mother Jackie who puts on this facade of perfectionism, or am I wild and free and sometimes quiet? And so just that self-discovery was a mountain. And now when I talk with leaders, to leaders, I understand the struggle where, leaders hide who they truly are. For many reasons. But I think having gone through this and faced it as a mountain, it has helped me become the leader that I am, who so believes and is passionate about being just my authentic self. I think one other mountain that I'll talk about is a period that I struggled with depression. And I didn't know to name it that during the time that I was going with it, but I was just sad inside of me. I cried a lot. I was there was just a lot of heaviness. And actually starting to climb the mountains was me trying to find something outside of myself that could challenge me to look elsewhere than just inside, because looking inside I was dying. I had suicidal ideations, and all the dark places that I went. But doing this physicality, doing something that was hard outside of myself, helped me to face that mountain inside of myself. And fast forward to today, you know, COVID helped us, you know, front and center talk about mental health and wellness. I understand why it is important, and why, again, when I'm the kind of leader that I am now, is to say that a leader's mental health matters. Guys, the statistics about the mental health challenges of Ugandans are truly, truly sad. I think we are, unfortunately, a community that has multiple traumas, including conflict that I talked about in the beginning, and many others, poverty and many things that traumatize us. So if a leader is not self-aware to know, I'm slipping, I'm falling, I need help, that too can be a mountain. So those are some of the mountains that I have faced personally, and that have helped me become the leader that I am today.
Okay, cool. Interesting conversations around there. Of course, I'll not be asking about how old you are, but if you talk about running, then there was, I can
yes, you can guesstimate it.
I can roughly estimate where. But I think for me, the interesting thing there is that having been around in Uganda, there's been a conversation of, especially when it comes to the political conversations, there is the issue of you guys do not appreciate where we came from. And I personally have a feeling that some people are trying to use that to perpetuate a certain narrative that I think we should have overgrown that after 40 years. What's your perspective in terms of, okay, you know where we came from, you see where we are, and where we are likely to go if this delicate situation is not handled well.
Yes.
You as well has been there. What's your perspective? And someone who's passionate about social justice and governance and all these things. A bit political, but I feel it's also part of the larger leadership question we are trying to address here.
So I think it is the role and duty of all of us to protect that which we have now. And when I say protect, I don't even mean status quo. I'm saying if we have enjoyed peace, how do we protect peace? Part of it is going to vote. Part of it is acknowledging that there were times when that was something we didn't do. Part of it is challenging our leaders when they do wrong. Is it hard? Absolutely. But we cannot sit back, because when we do, we will lose it again. And part of it is really demanding that our leaders do the right thing. I know they may not always want to. So when I was part of Tojikwata Ko, 105B, guys, it was because we're Tojikwata Ko. We're going down a certain road, which becomes hard to come from, right? The rebuilding that it took to come to where we are, if we don't protect these gains. So I am, for me, it has caused me to be a very, very active citizen, because I understand that it can be worse, and we don't want to go there. We absolutely don't want to go there. I also understand where people can, if you haven't experienced that hardship, and it's not part of your backdrop, I can understand where you become complacent, and these are just, old people's stories and whatever, but and that's where, for me, it saddens me, the saying that the thing we learn about history is that we don't learn from history. If we don't learn as Ugandans, history will teach us this lesson again. So do you want history to teach us this lesson again, or do we need to do the right thing?
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. And you talked again about something about, growing up as a preacher's kid. And then I attending your book launch, I heard a bit about how your siblings were talking about you being like the deputy parent, and of course that called you to be like pursuing a certain path of perfection. So because you were, we used to call it the EG, everybody looks at you as the EG, yet you also have your own life to live and be what you want to be. And now growing up to become, of course, the leader that you become, what have you learned about how do you deal with those with that whole thing of, okay, everybody expects me to be this way, but like we say in Luganda, like nangendi muntu, I have my own, so I have my own life to live as Jackie, but I also have another life to live as a leader. And what insights have you picked from that leaders who are struggling with that can be able to learn from?
So one of the things that I have learned, and part of it is even from when I grew up to, my parents were Christian, were saved, and sitting in fellowship with them and with elders, there would be moments of confession. And those guys would say their deep things, right? But I, in later years, understood that we all need that space where we can unburden, because if you do not have that outlet, we will see behaviors that are where we inflict self-harm. So you really have that choice, because even when you're not saying it, you're still finding an outlet for it. And you may not know. It can be being a workaholic, and some of us, hide behind that desk. It can be, the easy ones we talk about are alcoholism or drug abuse, or, pornography, or womanizing or manizing, but so it will either come out in destructive behavior or depression along the spectrum. And so I've learned that in order not to go there, find a way to let it out. It might not even be to a person. One of the things that I do, if I can't say it, I will write it. And so I found journaling as a practice that helps me find that outlet. Rest and sleep, which are two separate things. And I know, again, Cham, we talk about these things, but guys, they work for real. Part of the reason why we are stressed inwardly and outwardly is that we're not taking those moments just to disconnect. Find those places where you can disconnect, where you can go into trees and literally shout your things out. The trees will not tell your secrets, I swear. Been there, done that. And but just truly find an outlet, find a friend, find a tribe, find a group, the reason why at CivSource we do wellness retreats for leaders is find peers where you can talk about the things that you need to talk through. Find help. Find help. For me is my bottom line. Find help. Because when you do, you lead yourself better and you lead your organization better.
Okay. Let's talk about CivSource. I'm sure not many people understand what CivSource is.
Yes.
And if they don't understand what it is, they probably can't make good use of it. So let's hear about CivSource, what it's about, and what inspired you to start CivSource.
Wow. So CivSource was born out of transition. Talk about transitions. I and my team at the time were working for an American-based firm. It was a private firm that was doing back-end grant-making services. And so we were their country office in Uganda. And they were going through a transition where they were considering whether they wanted to do this long-term. And as part of that transition, also wondering whether they still wanted feet in the field. And so out of a conversation with themselves, they thought, no, let's close this outfit and restart as a public foundation in the Americas. And so they came to me and said, you know what, we need to shut down Uganda, but we still want to do work. And they were funding in the broad human rights, all kinds of human rights, from disability to refugees, to children, to women, to all kinds of things, climate justice, name it. And so I was given an opportunity to start something. And that something became CivSource. I took the first year of CivSource, which was 2017-18, to think about what do we want to do? What is it that we want to impact in the space that we are in? And we took a few months to just talk to people, civil society leaders, donors, and what can an outfit like CivSource do? And we came to three things, which is why we exist. One is to influence philanthropy. And by that we mean there are people who fund from outside of our context into our context, and they've made their mistakes. When we say influence philanthropy, it's because we understand our context, our culture, and we have contacts that you will never have because you're not from this context. And so to influence it is, can we give better? Can we give in more dignifying ways? Can we give in ways that understand context first? So influence philanthropy. We also exist as an institution to build strength. Again, a lot of the capacity building that was built in the times that we were working was Africans. The narrative was literally that Africans generally know nothing. We are poor managers. We are poor at everything, right? But we said, no. We also have held institutions together. We build things like we know some things. And so when we say we build strength, for us it's to say that the leadership offerings that we have are building on already the things that leaders are doing well. And so we have a portfolio around supporting leaders do what they do well. So we do wellness retreats. We have a one-year mentorship program called Grow. We support leaders going through transition and succession matters and issues. We have a program called Lead Bench, which is trying to groom and grow second-tier leadership so that people always have a pipeline of leaders. So that was our build strength. And then the shape narratives was to say, can we also tell stories and showcase what local giving looks like? Because again, the narrative is often that it's the West to the rest, they aid us, we are hopeless and useless and generally, right? But that narrative serves someone. It was to say that you cannot be an African and not have known generosity in any way, shape, or form. So can we tell those stories? Can we highlight them? Can we celebrate them? And so that is our local philanthropy work, to research what local giving looks like, to connect local givers through various things that we do together. So those are the three big pots of work that we do through our various expression. Influence philanthropy, build strength, shape narratives around local giving.
Do you just serve only the non-profit sector, or you serve the broad range of Uganda, if I could say?
So it is, one, we also are very clear that the non-profit sector doesn't equal NGO, just like gender does not equal woman, right? So we're busting that myth that, the non-profit sector is as wide as your alumni associations, your Rotary clubs, your small community beginners, your civil societies, any society that associates outside of political society, right? So it has breadth, length, depth, and so that is who we serve. And it can look like many things. But we've also interacted, of course, with governments. We've also interacted with private sector as well in this journey that we're on. Yeah.
And on this journey of CivSource, from the time you started to where you are right now, what are some of the key insights that you've learned? Probably even you yourself never knew, but generally that you see, okay, if you look back and say, okay, I think if I knew this, or if any leader knew this, say 5 years ago, something, they probably would have done the things that they do better.
Wow. One of the things that I'm learning in this space is just this change is constant. And I don't know why, Cham. I mean, we always say it, and I feel like it can become so cliche. But I think also the moment that, in fact, leaders are leading in now, change is not only constant, but the pace of change is so rapid that you can't. At some point I used to think, when do I just breathe? 2 days ago I was having a conversation with another leader and saying, how do we also support leaders not to become change fatigued? But at the same time, if we become too fatigued, by the time you come out of it, things have changed so much further. So for me, just embracing the fact that not only is change happening, but change is happening so fast. And so when we talk about leaders needing to be agile, it truly is like, it is a thing. It is a thing. And sometimes when I feel this pace now, I think to myself, what will my children's children feel? I hope at some point it slows down. I don't know, because I also don't know where this speedy yidi is going to take us. I hope we don't crash and burn. And that's why you absolutely need your tribe. That's why you need your wellness practices. That's why you need to anchor your mental health, because you cannot do well in a VUCA world, a volatile, uncertain, changing world, if you haven't secured certain foundations and fundamentals. And that has been my second learning. What are our foundations, and are we securing them? 2 years ago, a practice that I have as I lead is every year I either write a letter or I share with my team a word that is on my heart that I think we will work throughout the year. So 2 years ago I said, we're looking again at foundations. And by that I meant culture. Are we building the right culture? Are we building the right systems? Because you don't want to get to the 7th floor and found that there was something that we compromised in the foundation. So leaders, a thing that I've been learning, not that I'm perfect at it, is mind our foundations. Because you cannot reset when you're high up. And the cost of resetting will be much higher. So absolutely minding foundations. And maybe the last one is, and there are many, absolutely many lessons. Networks are like for real. And so I one of the things I call myself is a relationship weaver. I've found that I thrive in that space. I enjoy that space. That's the only way you can enable your organization grow, when you're making friends for your organization, when you are doing all kinds of connections, and they may not yield something right now, but just keep making friends, keep networked, keep networking, raise those friends, because your friends will help you strengthen your organization. Yeah.
And I've talked to a number of leaders, and you see this a lot in many of the writings about leadership, is managing the younger generation, the so-called Gen Zs.
Yes.
People have accused them of
all sorts of things, yes. I'm sure they accused us of things which we didn't hear about.
Of course.
Yes.
Although I had one sobering, recently I was interviewing the group CEO of ABSA, and he said, actually, has it occurred to you that even us, we used to be Gen Zs at one
right?
time?
Yes.
So
yes.
But if you were to write a letter, like you say, you like to write, a dear Jackie,
yes,
Jackie the Gen Z of those ends, who has an eye, who is so optimistic about the future, what would you, knowing what you know now?
Yes.
Obviously, there are so many Jackies who want to be you now. So if you were to write them a letter or address them in one State of the Nation address, what would you tell them?
Aish. The current ones or the ones to come?
No, the current ones, but who are aiming to be where you are probably in the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah. Okay, one thing that I preach, and I think I sound like a broken record, process. Guys, process matters. There is, don't believe in get rich quick. Don't believe in today I jump out. They happen. Those are few and far between. The rest of us, it's process. It's that daily grind. It's your daily habits. Process. You will get there. But what is your process? And for me, part of that process that I find very grounding is just being teachable. Who are you listening to? Who are you reading? Who are you learning from? May we never lose the capacity to learn, the desire to learn, the hunger to learn. At whose feet are you sitting to learn? Because you must be taught and you must understand this process. I start here and then I go here, because you need these mistakes that you make so that you're not making them much later on, because then we can tell that your foundations were not right, right? So I know we all want to get there in the blink of an eye. They used to call us the microwave generation, that we thought everything, just stick it in the microwave and ta-da, you have the meal. No. Truly, and process takes patience. It takes learning. It takes making mistakes and understanding why you made those mistakes. It takes being honest about those mistakes that you have made. You will get there. Do we absolutely wish you well? Yes, you will get there, but process matters.
How do you bridge that in an era where with technology you can achieve so much?
Jump some processes.
You can like jump everything, you know. Probably, and of course, like technology is a great thing, but I think it shouldn't be a replacement for certain elements of the processes. If you take a peek, even as we embrace technology, and I know you've. I mean, I first I think met you via technology, you know, online and everything.
Yes.
How do you bridge technology, but also there's certain key things like relationships, networking. How do you merge that?
Even technology is a process, Cham. I think, open your Facebook account today. Will you have 10 million followers? Again, there might be outliers, but the rest of us have to build content. You have to build trust. You have to build your name. You have to build your reputation, and all these things. Technology will never leapfrog your reputation for you.
But I've also met leaders who are, and I mean, I am a very strong believer in what technology can do for you, especially in so many ways. But when you're trying to engage with some leaders, especially, you know, being present, especially on social media and being able to create a tribe of followers out there and all that. You know, many people tend to look at the what if, and as a result, there's a lot of people who are missing opportunities. As one leader who is very present, you know, online and in many platforms, what are some of the great things that you've learned on the benefits of being online? But also, probably, I'm sure you also had a few hard lessons as well that you would like to share with maybe there could be guys out there who are missing on, you know, on the opportunities.
Okay, first of all, I'm a very slow adapter. And I am on 4 traditional ones that I can manage. The rest, the new things that come, I'm a very slow adapter. So I know that about myself and technology. I need to study the thing. I need to know that, anyway, I'm very slow, and maybe I'm even the worst person to ask about that. But having leveraged online space, again, it's a place to meet great people. It's a place to manage your story and your narrative. And I think in terms of choice and agency, you have the choice to choose which story you want the world to receive of you, right? The other way that I've leveraged online presence is just the causes that I'm passionate about. And so anytime I find out there's a giving opportunity, whether it is running, walking, giving of my money, because I also want to be online, not just to take, but also to give. And I may not announce, I came upon this and I gave like this. No. But I think it's an opportunity to give back to that community in a good way. And I think it has also helped me learn guardrails, because I will not bleed my whole self over internet. Is to say, it has also taught me boundaries. What can I say? How will I say it? Mindfulness, right? I choose my words very carefully. I'm very intentional. So all those are values and character traits that you learn while being online, while walking the streets online. Online is a space also to encourage others. That's why we like other people's things. Otherwise, we'd be on our pages and stay there, right? But you're liking someone else's thing. You're commenting. That is part of being generous to and with other people and finding out about what other people are doing. Online is a space of learning. Are you there just scrolling and there's space for that? But there's also, if you're not using and maximizing and leveraging online spaces for learning, you're losing out. And then, like you said, there's also managing when you need to disconnect from it. And I know it's becoming harder and harder, but yes, I know that I have to force myself to say, put it down and connect to a human.
Okay, good. And there's this bit about giving. Everybody, there's so much that has been said about it. If you have to give with the right hand, let your left hand not know. Then others have said that, you need to be careful how you give, because the takers will never stop taking. Then the younger people have come up with this issue of, black tax. Yet, like you said earlier, it is giving is something that is African. You know, it's you cannot be African and not know how to give. You know, so
It's literally like the air we breathe.
Yeah, and then other people have been saying like, okay, maybe giving is only for those who have. You know, me have nothing to give. Based on all these interactions you've learned, and I know you've invested yourself a little bit in terms of understanding and helping other how to give. I would imagine in a sustainable way for it. I would imagine. What are some of the insights you picked about giving that you think are important for leaders to have an idea about? Yeah.
Interesting question. So one is that, and it even came out in a recent study that Civ Legacy did with Charities Aid Foundation, is that even though Ugandans are givers, it's very interesting that they don't see themselves as givers. And so for me, there is a disconnect in how we view ourselves. And so one of the things that we are passionate about, even when we say we are shaping narrative, is to help people see themselves as givers, as contributors in this vast enterprise that we call Uganda. I think the other thing embedded in that is that people only see themselves as givers when they're giving money. And so the other thing we've tried to disabuse people is that no, you can give of your time. In fact, 44% of Ugandans in a study we did last year reported volunteering their time. And I think we underestimate the value of time, and I wish there was even a way that we could quantify time, because I bet we give more time than we actually do money. So each of us surely has 2-3 minutes that you can give to something that you're passionate about. So it's disabusing the assumption or notion that giving only equals money. And I think the other thing for me is that it's circular. There's no, it doesn't flow downward. I think we've grown up in a system that teaches us, again, the West to the rest. And so it creates a hierarchy, it creates a power structure that doesn't create dignity. But if we learn as leaders that giving is circular, one day I'm in need, another day you're in need, and that we meet each other's needs, whatever, and we're not even counting like, last time I gave you 2,000, why are you only giving? No, it's not about that, right?
Yeah.
It's just that we are together in a circular motion of giving, and that in fact maybe what I give now you will give to somebody else, and we are paying it forward and paying it backwards, and it's just a beautiful circle and concentric circles of giving, and it doesn't only flow from the top to the bottom. That's why in Africa, you know, practices even like burying, right? If you want people at your funeral, you had better be supporting communities to bury, right?
Yes,
so things like those, I know we take them for granted, but I think for me that is just the teaching that, therefore, in order not to lord it over others, in order to treat my neighbor well, I must understand that one day I'll be in need and need him, and need this person that I am looking down upon right now. And so even managing how you treat others, I think, arises from what we've been learning about giving. Yeah.
Okay. And let's talk about walking. How many kilometers have you clocked, by the way?
I don't know. I wish I had been consistent in counting them. What I can do, because I'm part of Activate Uganda, but I do the 100-day challenges, is to clock all of those and see how many. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I've walked around the world. Who knows?
Okay.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe it's speaking about your walking engagement. I've been monitoring you. I've had the opportunity to walk twice.
Yes,
and that's
yes.
I bet that's probably one of the longest moments I've had to walk.
Yes,
After
yes.
that, I've gone back to my lazy moments. You've had a chance to interact with a number of leaders and talk to them about a number of things. But also, I know that last, I think you ran a series where you've been talking to some of our. I wanted to use the word past leaders, and I realize that it has a negative connotation in Uganda. But some of the people who have been there before, and I'm sure you picked different perspectives. I don't know, what are some of the insights that have struck you? You know, that have struck you,
Wow.
or have struck you along this line of walking, along this journey?
So, Cham, if I were to answer your question, I would need to give you 472 answers because I've done 472 walks.
Oh, I'm listening.
You're listening. We do not have that time. But,
Yes.
so as I think of the main headlines, the other thing that is interesting is that recently I was in conversation with a professor from Wits University and his PhD students, and they're actually going to write an academic paper about the walks.
Wow.
And part of the things that they want to glean are what have been the common threads in the conversations, because every time I walk, I write a short story about the main things that we've talked about. But that aside, I think a few things emerge. Starting has been an interesting theme. That people are either afraid of starting, are thinking of starting, would like to start, but where do I start? So starting as an interesting theme, and I think for me it gives me insights into hope. People are believing in themselves, discovering who they are, discovering their purpose, and that's why they want to start things. So starting has been one of them. Oh gosh, there've been so many. Cham, that is such an unfair question. I will send you the academic paper. I will send you the paper. But no, I because the conversations are so varied and they go where they need to go.
Maybe let's cast around maybe what you picked in terms of what are some of their hopes and fears.
What I have picked. Yeah.
Like, are they optimistic about opportunities? Are they worried about certain things? What is troubling them? What is exciting them about Uganda?
And some of them have been non-Ugandans. But for the Ugandans, on a large part, like I said, really it is, I'm desiring to start something. Others come with, I'm struggling with this in my leadership journey. I just need someone to talk about it with. Others, it's hard to answer that question, Cham. It really is. I'm even struggling myself. Because like yesterday, and that's why I'm saying each walk is so unique that I'm looking forward to what have been the aggregate themes throughout. Yesterday, one of the beautiful things that I loved about the walk is this Ugandan living in Canada who found an opportunity and moment to celebrate Uganda in a local museum, and being the first African to do that in her local museum, I'm just like, wow, how many ways of celebrating and talking about Uganda do we miss? Sometimes because we are always quarreling, or as Amos Wekesa says, talking too much English and not seeing the opportunities of, guys, we have a country to sell because we have such a beautiful country. So truly, I feel coming away from these conversations, even as I'm struggling to answer your question, is that I feel I am so much richer, so much different. And maybe I hope that even the little seed that I can leave in the people that I walk with is nothing beats human connection. Guys, nothing beats human connection. And that everybody has something
that you can pick from. Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking of leadership, you mentioned that everything rises and of course falls on leadership. And I know in the Bible, I'm not sure if it's in the Bible, but somewhere in the religious circles, that say good leaders are from God. But then I also know that...
that one. Yes.
I also know that God works through people.
Yes.
Meaning that we have to assist God in selecting those leaders. And at a time when we are going to vote, we've seen a lot of people say, me, I'm not into politics. I don't vote. I'm not interested. Yet every once in a while, when things go wrong and we are complaining,
of course, we point at the leaders.
We are reminded that, this is happening to you because you
of
chose
the leaders.
The leaders that and looking at the trends of voting participation, I think last time I think when we first had elections was about, the turnout was about 70-something%, and keeps on reducing every year. And I think the largest part of non-participation happens in the urban areas. We are in a critical period where we are about to go to elections, And this comes down to, one, being able to offer ourselves up for being elected, but two, going out to participate, because the change that we want can only be basically brought through the leaders that we vote, you know. So around this time, what message would you like to send out to Ugandans out there, being able to participate in this, because we are in this round that comes once every 5 years, that if we don't participate, then we run a risk of seeing things that we do not want, or we want, that we now have an opportunity to have changed. But if we don't participate, we lose the chance.
Ooh. Oh, Cham, you've asked that question at a hard time, because I'm one of those Ugandans that's I'm very passionate about my right to vote. I understand that at some point this was a luxury. At some point we were actually not voting. So I think what we have down is the regular, right? We've finally gotten into the practice of every 5 years there will be an election. I think the area that we are continuously challenged is, are they free, are they fair? Because those three ingredients must come together: regular, free, fair. Like I said, on the regular, we have it down. The free and fair part is where we are struggling. And the free and fair part depend on institutions that we can trust. And unfortunately for us, and that's part of the role of a leader, is building an institution that people can trust. And between you and me and all the Ugandans, we know that we all have questions about the body that manages elections. And it's not only in Uganda. If you speak to many Africans, there is little trust in institutions that manage elections, even when you slap on the word independent, because at some point when we were trying to do electoral reforms, one of the things was, no, let's have the word independent. It's like, that's not what makes it independent, right? Because we see through these things. We see through these attempts at just tinkering at the edges. No, we truly want institutions that we can believe in, that we can count on. And when you look across the board, unfortunately, that is an area of challenge. And when we say fair, yesterday I landed in this country. I was traveling from abroad, and I won't say whose posters I found at the airport. And I thought to myself, okay, if we want to level the ground, will everyone who is standing for the highest office also be able to slap their posters at this place, right? Because for me, if we're going to do this, let's do it fairly. And we know that, unfortunately, our systems, many of them are unfair, are unjust. There have been videos going around about defacing of posters. You know that is a crime.
Yeah.
It is an electoral crime. But caught on camera are, moreover, people in uniform defacing candidates that are not of the root. So it's, once you strip a system of the free, of the fair, and only manage the regular, you're not managing a process that people can believe in. And so, of course, the numbers will keep declining, unfortunately. Am I going to vote may enable the regular? I mean, we tried. I'm thinking here of people like Bishop Zach and, being on the streets and being rounded up in this country like we were not citizens. But yeah, we were trying to educate. That's where civic education comes in, right? What are your rights as a citizen? What can you demand from your leaders? But even that space, shrinking. So civic education, coming with building institutions that people can trust, showing that even as a leader, I too will succumb to the rules that I expect everybody else. But when, as a leader, you place yourself outside of those rules, of course you're going to build a system that does not look like it should. And so we have many things to fix. We truly have many things to fix. And if we keep down this road, those numbers will keep going down, unfortunately. Yeah. And so I said you're asking it at a hard time because I have participated in this country as a voter, as an election observer, as intel to the media, sending our numbers from the polling stations. And I've truly, truly tried. Guys! And so when I say that this moment is hard, it's because, is it getting better? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm at that moment, Cham, where I'm thinking that, and we used to campaign for this as civil society, that maybe it is high time we used to call it a national dialogue, but a conversation amongst us Ugandans to say, guys, why are we pretending? Tulikuchi, that question we need to ask ourselves, Tulikuchi. I remember we used to ask it in education, teachers pretending to teach, students pretending to learn. So we have voters pretending to vote, they're also pretending to counter our vote. Tulikuchi. Why do we waste that time, energy, and resources pretending? So maybe we need to, not maybe, we do need to have some very hard conversations with ourselves, about ourselves, if we are to go to a different place.
Okay, interesting. If you were to address a room full of chief executives of non-profits from across the board, what are some of those key things you talk to them about leadership, their leadership as a sector, because how well the rest of your stakeholder ecosystem deals with you and trusts you and engages with you and basically aligns with you and your objectives also largely depends on how you guys are playing your game. What are some of the things that you think that you've developed as a person, as a non-profit sector leader in one part that you think you would love to share with your colleagues and peers that can help perhaps improve the leadership of the sector,
writ large.
In the mid to near term.
Wow. So, Cham, just to share that we actually do have these conversations amongst ourselves. And one of the things that we are talking about now is solidarity. In these hard times, and they're hard for everyone, and different sectors face different hardships. We've been asking ourselves, what does solidarity look like in this moment when collectively as a sector, at the last count, I think there were 17 or 19 laws to which we have to be compliant, where we're all struggling with funding and fundraising, where we are all struggling with human resource and keeping people and keeping the work going. What does solidarity look like? And how do we ensure, when I say fairness, if my brother's in trouble, so am I. But do we feel that sense of solidarity? And I guess solidarity can only come, back to your question in the beginning, when we are vulnerable to each other. And do we feel like we've created the sort of space, the sort of sector where we can be both our brother's keeper, as well as call each other out when we are not doing the right thing, but also be generous to each other, right? And these are questions we have to contend with all the time. I think the other thing that we've been struggling with also is, what do you do with because there will be bad seeds. And we have we've created QAM, which is the Quality Assurance certification mechanism, where we hold ourselves to account. This is the standard. If you are a non-profit social impact organization, this is what your governance should look like, your finances should look like, the way you manage your people, the way you interact with communities. We've set up those standards, but it's to continuously ask ourselves, are we living up to those standards? And where we fall short, are we able to call each other out? Do we trust that when Cham calls me out as a leader, that I need to respond, not just by words, but by changing what I am doing? Are we able to call each other up and out in that way? The other one is that we have to face squarely in the face is, are we relevant for what is coming? And it's not just us. Governments need to be asking themselves. I'm sure the private sector is always asking itself. That's why each sector needs to innovate differently. because the challenges, like we were saying in the beginning, the world is changing at a faster pace. Leaders are leading a different generation than they are from. So are we relevant as we are now? Or what are the ways that we need to change if we are still to be relevant to answer the questions that society demands of us? And what does society demand of us? Social justice, the services, not in a way that we are the ones to fill the gap, but how do we collectively meet our development needs? And how do we continue raising leaders that have the right values that will lead this sector in times to come?
Okay, interesting. And as we wrap up, what would you say are your parting shots? So, either areas that you feel were not addressed in the last 1 hour, or areas that you are passionate about that you would like to emphasize, especially in as regards to leadership as a core component of basically what drives humanity?
Wow. I'm going to say this and then I'll explain what I mean. What came to mind is that leaders need empathy. And again, I'm not even saying that don't call us out when we're doing wrong, but there is, leaders need empathy. Empathy, even the English bundle has gone. Leaders need, who is listening to leaders, who is holding up leaders. Yesterday, but when I had a conversation with a leader that has been for 2 years holding a space where this 50-year-old organization, global, international, is going through a change period. And we are lucky to have had her skill set at the right time. But I asked her, as you hold us through this change space, who is holding you? Do you have the right, who is listening to you, who is carrying you when you're just like, what is this that I'm dealing with? So when I say that leaders need empathy, it is to understand that the call is different and that we need to listen to each other in a way that helps us lead in the ways we need to lead. I think for me that would be my...
Okay, but I know I said this was the last question, but
Yes.
there's something you mentioned in regard to, empathy for leaders. And I mean, like, as a leader, you're always pouring into everybody's cup, who, and then the question is, who pours into your cup when
Yes,
one's empty,
yes,
especially.
yes.
And I've spoken to a couple of leaders. Others say they turn to God. Others, they go exercising. They find, like you said, they go to the forest and talk
And
to the
scream.
tree, and scream
In the streets, yes,
and all
yes,
that.
yes.
Yeah, but maybe are there your own like survival tips that you come up with? Say, this is my toolkit whenever things are becoming
Tight.
tough, or sometimes you don't even wait for them to become tight. You don't wait for the for things to overflow, the bad things. Every time there is a small sign, you say, okay, I think it's time for me to reach out for my toolkit and sort this out.
So there are things that I do, and then there are also things that I know that I am not yet good at. So resting is one of those things, you people. I am my mother's child. But yeah, resting. I loved that I had gotten a rhythm where every end of the month I'd take off 2 days to rest, but to rest and reflect. Because I think that's another practice that helps us as leaders. So I would look back at the month, what am I grateful for, what did I do well, and then plan ahead, what can I do better. But I used to literally go outside of Kampala and rest. Leaders, let's rest. I know I say this as the four fingers are pointing to myself. Journaling, I journal a lot. And like I said earlier, what is your outlet? What is your outlet that is not causing self-harm? Journaling is one other thing that I do a lot as a practice. And wide open spaces. They're just driving to nowhere because I know that it calms my mind, it stills my heart, it stills the worry. And then maybe finally just have that friend, guys. We all need that person that you can be your absolute self with. I'm not pretending, I'm not trying to perform perfection. I'm just being as real and as honest as I can be, and this is what I'm dealing with, and I need help, and seek help. seek help. I always lean on coaches, lean on mentors, lean on friends. Seek help.
Great. All right. Thank you very much, Jackie. It's been great having you yet again, this time on camera, and I promise to be back very soon because I believe there's a lot of things that we can do together, especially as LXL East Africa. We have a lot of interest in mentoring next generation leaders, but also how to make the present leaders be better, because like we've heard, we are living in a VUCA world. Things are running fast and there's need to always catch up. So for those of you watching us, if you want to be sure not to miss the next edition, do follow us on our channels. We're on X, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook. I think in Uganda, Facebook, was it banned? I don't know about that, but whatever you're using to access Facebook, do follow us. We're on TikTok, we're on YouTube, and as we get to learn to use other channels, we shall also be there. So make sure you follow us so that then you don't miss these conversations. And if you're a leader out there in East Africa and you think you've got a great story to share with the rest of the world, please do reach out. Let's come and tell your story so that together we can be able to empower our region and the rest of the continent. See you next time. I remain your wonderful host. I believe I am wonderful. Muhereza Kyamutetera.